Among gasoline engines, the Audi A4 B7 does not have a single new unit. All carried over from its predecessor, the 2.4-liter V6 disappeared. In general, this car does not have any frankly unreliable gasoline engines. If you choose a used Audi A4 B7, then pay attention to the condition, service history, and even the competence of the owner. If the car has no history and a quick inspection reveals a heavily oiled engine, then you should avoid this option. Not a single engine threatens with a terrible oil burn with the need to replace the piston group or liner. But under understandable conditions, of course, if it is not overheated and not tortured by the previous owners. 1.6 MPI V8 ALZ 102 horsepower, all four-cylinder petrol engines belong to the EA113 family. The base engine is a naturally aspirated 1.6 MPI engine with an alloy cylinder block and an 8-valve cylinder head. The worst thing the owner can do to it is overheat it, which ends with a crack appearing in the cylinder block with oil and antifreeze mixing. 2.0 MPI ALT 130 horsepower. Next comes a 2-liter naturally aspirated engine. It also has an aluminum cylinder block, but the cylinder head has 5 valves for each cylinder. And an inter-camshaft chain, which is tensioned by a tensioner, which also serves as a phase shifter. These are not cheap parts to replace. Every 200,000 kilometers they force you to part with a couple of $100, even from the factory. This engine shamelessly ate oil until its pistons were changed. It is interesting that this engine has its fans, who have either already spent money on replacing pistons and rings, or calmly add oil to it. Often oil consumption is associated with a malfunction of the crankcase ventilation system valve. The original valve, 06B103-211J, costs more than $100, but it lasts about 100,000 kilometers. There are cheap substitutes for $25. You can take a look at the 2-liter alt engine in a separate review. 1.8 turbo, BFB 163 horsepower, all turbo 4s for the Audi A4 also belong to the EA113 family, but their cylinder blocks are cast iron. From the A4 B6, only one such engine was inherited, the 1.8 turbo, which had 20 valves in its cylinder head, which were branded at that time, i.e. 5 valves per cylinder. 2.0 TFSI, BPJ, VIC 170 horsepower. 2.0 TFSI, BGB, BPG, BWE, BWT 200 horsepower. 2.0 TFSI, BUL 220 horsepower. Let's move on to the new engines for the Audi A4, the 2.0 TFSI Turbo 4. Let us remind you once again that this is the EA113 family, but the cylinder heads are completely different, 4 valves per cylinder and direct injection. And these are absolutely adequate engines in terms of reliability, service life and tuning. Easily last more than 500,000 kilometers, but you can't save on them and it's worth knowing their features. We have information about the injection pump pusher, the VCG valve, the intershaft chain, the phase regulator and much more. 3.0 MPI V6, BBJ 218 horsepower. Let's move on to V-shaped gasoline engines. The 3-liter 6 with the code BBJ is found on such Audi A4s only in the first year of their production. In 2006, it was removed from the Audi A4 engine range. To be honest, compared to the 2.0 TFSI engines, it doesn't really deserve attention, because it drives worse, consumes more, is more expensive to maintain, and can be frustrating due to sagging of the cast iron liners in its light alloy cylinder block. Although this engine has many fans, 3.2 V6 FSI, BKH 255 horsepower. In January 2005, the Audi A4 B7 received a new naturally aspirated V6 to 3.2 liters, direct injection and the infamous silumen coating of the cylinders. This motor did not have any cast iron liners. The first owners of Audi cars with such engines experienced a lot of troubles and expenses. It is believed that the limit of its service life before overhaul with a liner is 150,000 kilometers, with a maximum of about 200,000 kilometers. Moreover, for the last 50,000 or more kilometers it will greedily eat oil due to wear on the surface of the cylinders. This motor also has all the timing chains located at the rear. Chains have to be replaced on average every 120,000 kilometers. The right timing chain tensioner may give in, causing the chain tensions to jump. In general, such a gasoline engine should be carefully checked, and it is better to avoid it altogether. 4.2 MPI V8, BBK, VHF 344 horsepower. 4.2 FSI V8, BNS 420 horsepower. The 4.2-liter naturally aspirated versions of the S4 and RS4 are different engines. The BBK engine for S4 has 5 valves per cylinder, 40 valves in total. The more recent BNS4 RS4 has 4 valves and direct fuel injection. Both of these engines have 3 timing chains located on the flywheel side, and cylinder blocks made of a Lucille hypereutectic alloy. Those without sleeves, and the surface strength is formed by silicon crystals. These engines also have problems with the wear resistance of this cylinder surface and with the chains. Although this doesn't bother real fans of charged Audis, in the range of Audi A4 power units, with the advent of the B7 generation, there was also a partial transition to newer engines. 1.9 TDI PD 8V, BKE, BRB 115 horsepower, 2.0 TDI PD 8V, BPW 140 horsepower. All inline turbodiesel 4s are equipped with injection based on pump injectors. 8-valve engines have been retained in the model range. The difference between them is small, but important. The 1.9-liter TDI has an extremely simple chain-driven oil pump and no balancers. The 2-liter 8-valve 2.0 TDI with unit injectors has a balancer shaft unit with an integrated oil pump, which is driven by a chain. This design was used on early engines with the letters BPW. This chain tended to wear out unscrupulously, causing the entire module to stop and the engine to die due to a decrease in oil pressure. Today, such fatal problems do not happen, but you need to have an idea of what is happening there in the engine sump with the designation BPW. Ideally, an alternative module, 03G103 plus 295-liter, with a gear drive rather than a chain drive would be installed there. 2.0 TDI PD 16V, BVG 121 horsepower. 2.0 TDI PD 16V, BRD 136 horsepower. 2.0 TDI PD 16V, BLB, BRE 140 horsepower. 2.0 TDI PD 16V, BVA 163 horsepower. 2.0 TDI PD 16V, BRD 170 horsepower. New engines with pump injectors for the Audi A4 B7 are 2-liter 16-valve units. These motors are equipped with an improved balancer module, 03G103 plus 295-liter, with gear drive. However, the oil pump is driven by a 77mm pencil drive, 03G115 281D, which it is advisable to replace with a new one every 100,000 kilometers so that it does not turn and stops driving the oil pump. But on 16-valve engines, the pump injectors, 03G13073M, are attached on both sides and do not swing, breaking their nests in the cylinder head. 2.5 V6 TDI, BDG 163 horsepower. Until the summer of 2006, the Audi A4 B7 was equipped with an old V6 turbodiesel with a distributor injection pump. This engine still serves normally, although until 2010 it had many problems with camshafts. 2.7 V6 TDI, BSG 163 horsepower. 2.7 V6 TDI, BPP 180 horsepower. 3.0 V6 TDI, BKN 204 horsepower. 3.0 V6 TDI, ASB 233 horsepower. With the advent of the B7 generation, new V6 turbodiesels appeared on the Audi A4, first a 3-liter, and from the end of 2005, a 2.7-liter. These engines have cast iron cylinder blocks, a timing chain drive located on the flywheel side, and common rail injection. These engines are very reliable and economical, yet powerful. They have very few weaknesses. ZF5 HP19A 5-street automatic transmission. ZF6 HP19A, AL 426-speed automatic transmission. Traditional automatic transmissions from ZF are installed only on all-wheel drive versions of the Audi A4, i.e. with a 200 horsepower turbo 4, 3.2 and 4.2 engines, as well as a 3-liter turbo diesel. 5-street automatic is only available with the old petrol 3.0 V6. These gearboxes have no obvious vulnerabilities, wear and aging are manifested by typical signs, jerks and jolts when changing modes and gears. Their repair is not expensive, and to extend their service life it is recommended to change the ATF, filter and pan gasket every 60,000 kilometers, while avoiding aggressive driving. Multitronic, VL300-01J. Front-wheel drive Audi A4s with 2 pedals are equipped with a Multitronic CVT. Such modifications are the majority in this generation. At the beginning of production, the Variator served approximately 100,000 kilometers, but after modifications its service life tripled. If you follow the regulations and change the oil, G0521A0A2 every 60,000 kilometers or more often, as well as avoiding sudden starts and slipping, Multitronic can last up to 300,000 kilometers. However, the Variator may experience problems with the control unit, Similar to problems with the ABS unit, failure of the contact wires. This can cause errors related to the transmission, such as the selector or speed sensors. The control unit is located at the rear of the variator, and it is quite easy to dismantle and repair if necessary. The windshield wiper trapezoid for the Audi A4 model from 2000 to 2008 is in stable demand both at dismantling sites and sellers of new spare parts. The original 8D1955 603D costs about $300, replacements from $30. This is because one day its hinges become permanently corroded and jammed. We recommend removing the trapezoid and cleaning it every couple of years. You also need to keep the gutter under the windshield clean. All attention to the drainage holes in it. If they are clogged, then staying in a car wash or in the rain will end with water filling the gutter under the windshield and flowing through the holes in the engine shield into the passenger compartment. Water will saturate the interior carpet, end up on the floor mats and flood the comfort unit. The comfort block is located under the platform for resting the driver's left foot. 4 wire harnesses are connected to it, so that water will precisely fall into it. The flooded comfort unit, AE959433, will have to be replaced with a used one and coated for your car. And the interior will have to dry. Drains need to be cleaned under the battery and its platform, under the vacuum brake booster. This hole is also visible from the side of the steering rack, near its gearbox. There is also drainage on the navigator's side, under the air filter housing. These generations of Audi suffered from short-lived wiring. The insulation from the wires falls off, which can lead to serious and unpredictable electrical problems. Sometimes errors appear on the ABS unit or even a complete lack of communication with it. Here, either the contact threads in the block itself have come off from soldering, or the contact in the connectors has disappeared due to oxides. It also often happens that the fuses in the block under the steering wheel and on the left side of the interior panel blow out, and if the ESP system indicator is constantly on the instrument panel, plus there are problems with the performance of the cruise control, then you need to replace the brake light switch. It is mounted on the brake pedal. To access it you need to remove the plastic under the steering column. The brake light switch, 1K2 945 RDW, costs about $33, and analog replacements cost up to $10. Also, due to a malfunction of this part, the brake lights can be constantly on and drain the battery overnight. All-wheel drive Audi models with Quattro system are outstanding for their reliability. The main concerns come down to the increased number of drives and the cardan shaft. To be sure, it is recommended to change the oil in the differentials. The original oil, G052145S2, costs about $75 per liter, and up to 5 liters will be required. You may want to consider alternative oil options that are much cheaper. Don't forget to purchase new differential plugs. Reusing old ones is not recommended. The entire suspension of the Audi A4 B7 is the same as the B6 generation. The steering rack and steering rod are located on top. They are mounted on the engine shield. The steering rods are attached to the steering knuckles from above. The steering rack can hardly be called troublesome, although oil leaks occur along the hoses. The entire mechanism can jam in cold weather. The power steering pump does not last forever, especially if the oil in the system has not been replaced for a long time. The rack may leak and knock, but this can be easily fixed in specialized workshops. The Audi A4 B6 has front wheels mounted on wishbones. A total of 10 ball joints and 10 silent blocks are installed at the front. The original suspension often served up to 200,000 kilometers before replacement. Today, such Audi A4 B7 chassis are often stuffed with non-original parts that last 50,000 to 80,000 kilometers, which requires frequent replacement. The control arm bushings can be purchased separately, but the ball joints are integrated into the aluminum control arms. The original lower front control arm, 8E0407-151R, today costs up to $300, and the corresponding silent blocks, 4D0407-182G and 8E0407-181C, cost $30 and $55. The most expensive of them is the one that has a shock absorber strut attached to it. The upper control arm ball joints are attached to the steering knuckle with a single bolt, which can oxidize over time. But for an experienced mechanic, unscrewing it will not cause problems. The upper arms, 8E0407-509P and 8E0407-505P, cost $300, and their original silent blocks, 4B0407-515C, cost $35. Substitutes usually cost 3 to 4 times less. The Audi A4 B6 uses a multi-link suspension at the rear, but it is different for front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive models. Most silent blocks are available as separate original parts. The most loaded and then in demand silent block of the Trunnion, 8E0500-5200-3D, connected to a spring-loaded lever costs $45. Its analogs cost about $10. The Camberlink 8E0500-1529K is often purchased in a non-original version at a price of $25 to $55, and the silent blocks of the upper control arms, 8E0500-1541S, are purchased non-original for $10 or for $30 if the original is chosen and repressed. For the largest lower arm, 8E0500-5311AF, non-original silent blocks are often chosen. A set of 2 will cost $30. Actually, the body of the Audi A4 B7 is completely steel and rusts. Through corrosion affects the front and rear fenders, along the edges from the inside. The wheel arches also seriously rust, from the shock absorber cups and down to the very thresholds. The thresholds on many of these cars are already asking to be re-welded with the installation of repair parts. The seams between the outer parts of the sills and the bottom and the jacks rust especially badly. These areas are not visible from the outside, because hidden by plastic covers. In general, often the areas of the bottom and sills covered with plastic look exactly the same as, for example, subframes or the front edge of the spare wheel niche. Beetles cover the rear fenders along the junction with the rear bumper, and all the lower edges of the doors bulge. In general, due to a dozen or 2 wet winters, the body of these cars is easily damaged. These Audi headlights blind, the reflective coating falls off the lenses, so the low and high beams stop shining at a sufficient distance. Audi A4 door hinges sag over time. Of course, this primarily concerns the driver's door. The sagging is also accompanied by the fact that the door does not close properly. To compensate for the sagging, you can place a plate, 7L5831-483, under the bottom hinge. These are sold literally everywhere today. You just need to decide on its thickness or buy all 3 options with thicknesses from 0.5 to 1.5 millimeters. In addition, there is a popular trick with bending the bottom hinge using a 17 nut. If you are not afraid of denting the door, you can adjust the door this way. For these cars, the wiring in the corrugated transitions from the body to the doors breaks, which is why some or all of the electrical components of the door stop working. This is not the worst problem. Broken wires can be repaired. If you choose such a car, be sure to check the functionality of the electromechanical components of all doors, from power windows and locks to lighting. In addition, the Audi A4 B7 has a whole bunch of problems with door locks. Let's start with the larvae. No one uses them until the battery runs out. And then it turns out that the lock in the cylinder does not turn. We advise you to sometimes use larvae, and if they have already become stubborn, contact lock specialists who will remove them, disassemble them and clean them. You can do this yourself. There are plenty of instructions on the internet. The main thing is not to confuse the order of the secrets in the larvae. Further, Audi and other VAG models have a problem with limit switches, which is why the ECU does not see the fact that the door is closed. The limit switches are in the locks. Most often they just need to be replaced with new ones. And if door locks begin to work poorly, then the problem may lie in either cracked wiring in the corrugations in the openings or a missing contact on a simple lock servo board. The servo drives of these machines are electromechanical. As a rule, you need to restore the contacts by soldering the legs as in electronic boards. The motor fails less often. The entire lock can simply be replaced with a used one or a new one. 8E1-837-016AA, 8E1-837-015AA. The original ones are very expensive, but there are more than a dozen replacements on sale starting at $100. There is a demand for locks for the Audi A4, so the supply is very wide. Frequent problems in the Audi A4 B7 interior are broken right hinge of the glove compartment lid, broken glove compartment button rod, broken sun cap hooks, peeling and sagging ceiling fabric, broken seat heating threads, malfunction of the damper actuators in the ventilation system. There are up to 6 of them. Computer diagnostics can determine the faulty mechanism. One original damper servo motor, 8E1820511L, 8E1820511M, 8E1820511G, etc., costs up to $50. There are no substitutes for them. In addition to this, the speaker in the instrument panel stops working. The same buzzer that beeps when, for example, the key is inserted into the ignition and the door is open. It can be replaced with a new one, 8E35399, a used one, or any equivalent. These cars must sound a sound signal when closing. The standard alarm siren beeps. If its sound disappears, then it means that the built-in batteries leaked, filled with acid and ruined the board. This trouble threatens any used ear siren, 8L09516505A, they sell for $10 to $30. If the performance of the standard siren is important to you, then you should open its case and replace the 2 batteries with new ones with similar characteristics. Let's go back to the salon again. If the power windows start to malfunction, i.e. if they don't obey the buttons, then you need to remove the button block on the driver's door and clean it thoroughly. If the buttons already look sloppy, because the paint has peeled off or a button has fallen off, then it can be replaced. A new power window button block, 8E0959-851 5PR, costs up to $150, but there are several analogs on sale for $30.